Hey viewers, my name's Kara. I'm your host for Tuesdays on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about dark nights of the soul. Not dark nights like Batman. Soul nights. Darkness. This week's topic is brought to us by our very own Pagan Perspective member, Brendan, who asked, "What has been the biggest challenge you have faced in your journey? Have you ever been through a dark night of the soul, and what got you through it?" So dark nights of the soul is a phrase that I have heard Brendan use before, and a phrase that I've heard other people use before in paganism and witchcraft traditions. And to me, in that realm, it refers to just kind of like those really tough times that we go through in our daily lives, right? It's a dark time for our soul. However, the phrase in religious history usually refers to a crisis of faith, not just like a tough time that we're going through with our soul in general, but specifically a faith crisis. One of the most popular examples is Mother Teresa. Actually, that's not the most famous example. The most famous example in Roman Catholicism is probably Saint John of the Cross. Saint Therese of Lisieux also went through one, and Mother Teresa, however, is the one that I'm the most familiar with because I played Mother Teresa in a play once, and I did a lot of research about her and the things that went on in her life. And when I look at it in those terms, and I think about, there have been people in the past who have messaged me or messaged the collab about having crises of faith, and when I think of that, I don't feel that I've ever had something like that I've gone through, unless you consider the initial, when I was younger, when I was being raised Roman Catholic, thinking that I was a Catholic and having a crisis of that faith, of just not being able to fit it. But I don't think that's exactly the same, because all of the other examples are kind of like staunchly held beliefs that you just kind of have a crisis with, and typically most of the time I think people find that faith again. Whereas for me, it was a crisis of, I don't believe this, and what does that mean? And then finding paganism and learning about that and finding that that is really my path. But as far as since I've been in paganism, I haven't had any sort of overall faith crisis, I'm happy to say. But when I think about the other thing, the thing that I think of when I think of the soul within our realm, not thinking of its overall religious significance as a term, there have definitely been a lot of struggles within my path that my path furthering and growing and changing has contributed to, and a lot of just tough times within the soul, like I was saying. There have definitely been those. They're not crises of faith, but they are dark times. And I feel like the biggest one in my life, not just within my spiritual path, the biggest one in my life probably started during college, and I don't think has really yet ended. And that's another thing that makes it different, right? Because the term dark night of the soul within the religious context is typically not an isolated incident, but typically it's a short amount of time and then there's something beyond it. With Mother Teresa, it's one of the longest known cases that people refer to. It pretty much spanned decades of her life toward the end of her life. So these are things that can be ongoing. But again, hers was a crisis of faith. Mine is not. But just my toughest thing in my life that I've had to deal with. And so during college is when I started seeing a counselor and talking to someone about what they referred to as my experience with anxiety and depression. And so that's why I say that's really when it was triggered and when it came about, and when I experienced the hardest part of it was about a year long, and it's never been that bad again, but it's definitely always still here. And so that's why I say it doesn't feel like I've come out of it. And it's one of those things that once it's there, it never really goes away. But the hardest part was definitely for a year of time. And what got me through it was my friends mostly. I really am a communicator. I am a talker. You know this about me. And my friends were always there to let me vent to them, to let me talk through my problems. I also went to counseling, and that helped me a lot. As I said, it's just talking about it and having a really good listening ear, someone to witness for you. At the time, back then, I did not know how to be a spiritual witness for people, and I did not have people who could be that for me. Now, that is a skill that I have acquired since then within my practice and my spiritual path. At the time, however, it was a lot of my friends and my counselor and new romantic partners who were kind of getting to know me during this horrible time, really got to know the worst depths of my soul kind of right away. And they helped immensely, and I'm forever grateful to them, and I bring it up whenever appropriate, and I constantly remind those people that they are so important to my life because they helped me through that. That is the darkest night of my soul of my whole life, not just within my spiritual practice. Within my spiritual practice, I'd say the biggest struggle that I've gone through, not necessarily a dark night of the soul, kind of like that, but the biggest struggle has been this past year, ever since I've been talking about these challenges and all these different changes that I'm making, and the ways that my path is kind of pushing me and shifting me into different things. Last year, the things that I was doing, the messages that I was receiving, the inspiration, the encouragement that I was receiving from the universe led me to make some decisions in my life that caused big changes. And now, looking back over the past year, almost nothing in my life is the same as it was a year ago today. I'm still living in the same place, and that's about the only similarity. I don't have the same job, I don't have the same partner, I don't even have the same cat, you know? Of course, the cat, that was not something that was my decision. But it's just, you know, when changes happen, it all changes at once, right? So they say when you want to change a habit, it's best to change all your habits at once, break all your habits at once. That's what I've always heard, and I think that has always worked for me. So, for example, they say, you know, if you're trying to make a change in your life or whatever, and you want to change a certain thing, like maybe your morning routine or whatever, you would also change little things like maybe rearrange your desk so that you have to reach to a different side to get something else. Or maybe you want to walk a different route to get to your class across campus, or walk through a different hallway in your school. Or the biggest thing, move where your waste paper basket is. The waste basket, the rubbish bin, the garbage can, whatever it is that you call it. Move that, because that's such a big habit that we get into. We just, like, muscle memory, we know where it is. Move that, break that habit. So I do believe that you have to break all habits at once. It helps, not that you have to, but it helps. And that's kind of what the universe did for me. Like, it pushed me toward making one change, and then that kind of had a domino effect that created another change and another change. And then my cat left me, which was not me making a change, but the universe making a change. Something changed. And it was really rough for a little bit, because it was like nothing that I had is still here, and just everything was gone. And then it slowly started to rebuild itself, right? But so there's that kind of fear moment, or just loneliness moment in the middle of that, where you're like, what did I just do? What is happening? And it's just a lot of having to trust and knowing that the universe knows best, and it's going to bring it back around. So I think I'm still within that too. I haven't really gotten through it yet, but what's really getting me through it as I go, in addition to friends, is just that trust and synchronicity, and being reminded constantly that the things that I'm doing, though difficult, are leading towards something better and different. And, you know, we're not doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, which is the definition of madness that is attributed to Albert Einstein. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is insanity or madness, I forget. So it's leading to something different, it's causing changes, it's doing something else. And my biggest struggle has been this recently, trying to do my own stuff full time and realizing that it's not happening right now, and I have to make some changes, and I have to give some things up, and I have to do something differently, and I'm not going to be able to do exactly what I wanted to do, and that is difficult. it's difficult and I'm resisting it, but I have to. I have to give in. I have to do something. Something's got to give. So I'll let you know when I'm through it, how I got through it, I guess. But yeah, that's how I've gotten through a lot of the stuff in the past, has mostly been friends and seeking help where you need it, whether it's from counseling or from your friends and family, or a lot of the time lately, since I don't have a counselor right now and I don't always have friends available, I've been praying. Like when I feel like I need to talk to someone, I go and light incense at any one of my multiple altars in this room and talk to the deities that I feel I need to talk to at that point, and I usually do feel better afterwards. So, it helps. That's what it is for me, is the talking it out, it's the praying aspect, right? And then later is the meditation aspect, where you then listen to the messages. So praying is talking to the universe, meditation is listening to the universe. There are lots of other versions of that saying floating around. Some people will use the term God, some people will use the term universe, some people will use different terms, but I say universe. Another thing I found online that I thought was interesting, when I looked up Dark Night of the Soul, one of the references in pop culture, it says that F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote, "In a real dark night of the soul, it is always 3 o'clock in the morning." And that resonates with me because 3 o'clock in the morning is a very salient time for me. I was born at 3 o'clock in the morning, and 3 o'clock in the morning has always been this weird time that if I'm up at that time, that's when all of a sudden my inspiration kicks back in. Like, I could have been so lethargic and so tired and so just empty for hours and hours and hours, and then all of a sudden I'll get this, like, freak inspiration or motivation or something, and it's always been around that time of night. And I only made the connection recently that is the time that I was born, and I wonder if that has anything to do with why I get like an extra burst of energy at that time. I don't know, but that's just a connection that I made recently that I thought, interesting. So to see that F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote that a real dark night of the soul is always 3 o'clock in the morning was really hit me. So that's my video for this week, guys. I will see you next week, and until next time, tell us in the comments what you think about this week's topic. Let us know if there's anything that you would like to share, and don't forget to be awesome. Blessed be, and goodbye.